protests for this Citizenship Amendment Act have been taking place right since December. What factors have allowed it to turn ugly now?
Well, as you said, the protests have been going on since December. Most of them have been peaceful. But before this, in Uttar Pradesh state, there was also 30 deaths reported at that time. This particular protest started out with people, again, peacefully protesting, but they had blocked a road. And once they blocked the road, local BJP leaders said that they wanted the roads cleared, and they set upon this set of protesters. Initially, it was a bit Hindus and Muslims in that neighborhood, but it expanded very quickly to a much more vengeful attack by mobs who say they're supporters of the BJP, and they started targeting Muslims.
Now, I want to talk about, what members of the BJP have been saying, because they've said that the capital, New Delhi, has been hijacked by elements of radical Islam. Do you agree with that statement, or is it totally out of whack?
It's completely out of whack. I've been to a number of these protests. They've all been peaceful. A number of them have been students. In Shaheen Bagh, the area that they were talking about, there were thousands
Largely
of
women.
Yeah, were women, and while it's a Muslim majority neighborhood, other people were there. It was a completely peaceful protest where people were singing songs. They were singing the national anthem. It was multi-religious, so people from various religions came there to participate in solidarity. So no, that this narrative is really quite sad, that that instead of addressing the concerns of the people and why they were protesting, there was an attempt to discredit this entire protest.
Indeed. Now, the thing is, we've seen resistance to this controversial bill that has now become law. The government has no plans to take it back, essentially, despite resistance from the streets, despite now 33 deaths.
Well, it's actually 50 deaths if you count the previous ones. No, it's more than that. It's the law. This law is in the courts now because it actually discriminates against the very basic principle of the Indian Constitution, because it discriminates on the basis of religion. It determines citizenship rights based on religion. But this law applies only to asylum seekers. The problem really is that it's linked to the plan for a citizenship verification process. Now, once the verification process exists, what it does is it demands documentation. Now, India is a poor country. Documentation is very hard to get. For women, it's particularly hard. And so therefore, what is happening here is that people are worried about the very essence of their identity, their citizenship. So it's much more than just this law. It's the entire plan that the government has.
And it's going to affect the poorest of the poor, who won't have access to birth certificates, etc., etc.
Absolutely.
But I want to talk to you about India's judiciary, because just yesterday, overnight, I think, a judge critical of the violence over in Delhi, has raising concerns from politicians and the police, has been transferred. So basically, in India today, you cannot say anything against the government.
Unfortunately, that's true for everybody. There is, if you speak out against the government or criticize the government, the likelihood of your being called anti-national or being accused of sedition is extremely high. While on the other hand, there is a complete double standard in the fact that there are all these BJP leaders and supporters who have been inciting hate, who have been inciting violence, and no action is taken against them.
I want to ask you something. A couple of days ago, we just had the U.S. President Donald Trump in town. The violence that happened was when he was literally in the same city. He really had nothing to say about, about this law, about anything. He said it's an internal matter for India to deal with. And he actually did cite some figure that how India has had the number of Muslims in the country raised from 14 to 20 million or something.
Yeah, well, the thing is that what President Trump should have, and that is true for all world leaders. We often say that you can have bilateral relations, strategic interests, economic ties, whatever else you want to do in the course of your relations. On human rights, you must speak out. And that is true for when India talks about France, or France talks about India, or the US talks about, it is the responsibility under the universal human rights laws. Now, while President Donald Trump didn't speak to it, we must also know that in U.S. senators and members of Congress have, on the other hand, raised extreme concerns and have sent letters of concern. The UN Human Rights Commissioner today has spoken about India and has talked about the fact that the police has been biased in terms of supporting pro-government people and not acting against them in a proper way.
I mean, we did have the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom that spoke out saying it's troubled by the violence. India responding, saying the report is factually inaccurate. Meenakshi Ganguly, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us on the program today.